Hey, what up, everybody? It's time for another episode of Positive Reinforcement. I don't know what that was. It's time for another episode of Positive Reinforcement, the podcast where I, your host, Jonathan Reinforce Larson, gives the Overwatch community a treat. Bam. Bam. We got him. Episode 7? I think I should really look this up before I start recording. Anyway, we're here with another episode 7, going into week 5 of the Overwatch League. How are we doing? I'm still asking a question to listeners who can't respond back to me. Unlucky. Anyway, we're back here ahead of week 5, the last week of stage 1 before our stage playoffs. And I'm in a good mood. I'm looking forward to this one. It's going to be a good one. It's probably going to be a short one because we only have 2 days worth of matches. So this might not be a 1-hour podcast or anything, but I just wanted to chime in. And say hello to all my regular listeners and all the Overwatch fans out there listening to my voice. Just wanted to say hello. Check in with you all before the week starts. This is going to drop on Wednesday night for me, Thursday morning if you're European. But we don't have games until Saturday, but I wanted to keep a regular schedule, or a strict schedule. I don't know what the appropriate word is, for all of you people who go on commutes, etc. in the morning. Just wanted to check in on you, see how you guys are doing. So, I'm really looking forward to this one. It's going to be a good one, because I feel like last podcast, I was a bit out of it. I had so many other things on my mind. It gets a bit stressful when you have a full-time job and you have so much to take care of after a week of work, and then you gotta record 2 podcasts as well. But I feel dedicated. I'm really dedicated to this podcast. So today I'm back. I'm in a good mood. Did some work at the office. Went to the gym. And now we're here. Now we're here talking Overwatch. So episode 7. It's going to be a good one. Let's get into the matches. Remember, this is a pre-podcast, so we're going to go over the matches coming this week. Talk a bit about the teams playing. I think for the break, I might as well go over that now, even though it is like 2-3 weeks away. I think for the break, I'm just going to do like a complete analysis of like all teams following stage 1 and do like a super mega palooza whoopie-doo kabam podcast with a guest or so, maybe a guest or 2, and just talk about the teams, etc., and essentially just go over all that stuff, because it's we're getting to the point where we have a good understanding of all the teams in the Overwatch League, and we can start to do some proper analysis. But if I'm going to do all of the teams, I think it'd be more fun to invite someone on and talk with me and hear what they have to say as well, so I can tell them how wrong they are. That's how it goes on the Positive Reinforcement podcast. So, let's get into it. No harmonica this time, because someone on Twitter complained that they were out running listening to my podcast, and I scared the living shit out of them when I started blasting my harmonica. My poor harmonica skills. He did not appreciate it. So, it was a bit, there was some tongue-in-cheek there with the tweet. But anyway, I think it was pretty funny. And it was pretty funny mentioning it. So, I'll practice my Jurassic Park theme on my harmonica, and maybe when I get better I'll return and do a bit of a segue. But for now, it's time for stage 1, week 5. Saturday, March 16th. We have Washington Justice on Saturday at 12 p.m. Pacific, going up against the Paris Eternal. Bit of a trap game here for the Paris Eternal, don't we think? They have back-to-back matches this week, and this, given Paris Eternal's recent form, could be a really winnable game for the Washington Justice. Now, Washington Justice, they are garbage. They are complete and utterly garbage. Worst team in the league by far. I've never seen anything like it. That's a lie, because Shanghai Dragons went 0-40 last year. What a short memory. It's like, I say that, and it's like in any other sport, there would be nothing like it. But in the Overwatch League, we have something like it, and it was the Shanghai Dragons going on in 40. It's a weird feeling. Anyway, a winnable game for the Washington Justice. I don't know why, but it is a bit winnable, because Paris Eternal have gone 1-11, And I'm just saying, like, I'm not saying Washington Justice are better than Paris Eternal on any map or on any composition. But I'm just saying, if Washington Justice, they win the control map, they won the control map versus Philly. Maybe they start tilting the Paris Eternal a bit. Paris Eternal are like, holy shit, we're about to lose to Washington Justice. Remember, Washington Justice went up 2-0 against the London Spitfire. So it's very possible that Washington Justice take the first or second map against Paris Eternal, right? A team that is much worse than both of those, in my opinion, anyway. And then we might get into tilt territory for Paris Eternal. So, very winnable game. Very winnable game. I don't think Giannis is really going to outperform Ben Best. Guido honestly might outperform Hip. Who knows? Cruz obviously for Paris Eternal might perform a bit, but he's also a bit of a feeder if his team doesn't get going. So we'll see how this matchup goes, really. We'll see how it goes. Fasix from Washington Justice is on my radar a bit, because he's a bit of a actual performer on Lucio on Washington Justice. He just has a garbage team, so it's hard to shine. But maybe the Lucio duel or Corey beating one of Paris Soria. It's going to be interesting. Playoff implications, of course. Paris Eternal, they can't drop a single map. They have to win 4-0 in both of their games this week to really stand a chance to make the stage playoffs. I think that might even be like they have to get 2 4-0s. There's no what if or other way, really. I think I could be wrong on that one. Don't quote me, but it might be that way. Anyway, our next game on Saturday is going to be London Spitfire versus Seoul Dynasty. Another really close games. Like, honestly, a lot of the quality on these games this week, some of them are a bit subpar, and we might get into that later. But all of the games are honestly pretty winnable for all of the teams. Like, we're not having one-sided games this week anyway, in my opinion. So London Spitfire takes on the Seoul Dynasty, and very winnable for the Seoul Dynasty. I think London Spitfire are the favorites by far going into this one, given that you have Profit on the Zarya, and then Guard is decent on the Brig. You know, I think the narrative anyway is that London Spitfire are looking a lot better with Profit on Zarya, and then Gesture can play his Winston. And I do still think that it's a team on the rise, even though they lost to Shanghai Dragons. It's a bit of a team on the rise here, London Spitfire. So I think this could be a good game. And then you have Seoul Dynasty, who I mean, heck, they even could be favorites in this game, Seoul Dynasty, and someone's going to moan when I say that, but honestly, like, Seoul Dynasty, it wouldn't surprise me if they just end up beating London Spitfire in triple tank, triple support. Like, if Fisher goes off against London Spitfire, like Fisher went off against the LA Gladiators in week 1, I mean, he might just plow through the London Spitfire in Gesture. And honestly, he might be a big factor in why they're winning this game. Fisher feels sometimes that he plays down to his opponent. And so he's had a few games where he's a bit off, but he's had a few games that he's on. And then Flera will see if he mantles the Brig or the Zarya this week. Remember, they subbed in sort of like the B team against the Washington Justice, which honestly didn't look that bad. It didn't look that bad, so I can see them start implementing a player or two from that squad. Obviously, I think Mitchell is a star performer from Seoul Dynasty as well, so we might not see Sundba as much. But still, I think that this is a Seoul Dynasty squad that is looking scary. And I'd be very cautious if I was a London Spitfire. I think this could be an incredibly entertaining game. And honestly, I honestly wish that Seoul Dynasty went... Or do I? Heck. I mean, if you listen to this podcast in the past, I think the Seoul Dynasty experiment is super interesting. So I sort of want them to go to playoffs, but at the same time, London Spitfire, I think they need to make this playoffs because they are the inaugural season grand finalists. And I do think that to prevent them going into like panic mode or anything, I think this roster should just go to stage playoffs to calm down potential concerns a bit. I'd be so interested to see this current roster with Garden in a potential dive meta. So I just want the Lona Spitfire to calm down a bit, to reassure themselves. So maybe if they make stage playoffs, that's good, but Soul Dynasty, I love the experiment they have going on. And the fact that they even could make the stage playoffs is quite amazing, honestly, given some of the games we've seen from them. So, going to be a great game. Boston Uprising takes on the Dallas Fuel. This is also a close game. Like, I'm telling you, all of these are pretty close games. Honestly, this could be a game Boston Uprising wins, with Fusion's just dominating. But it could also be a game where Dallas Fuel just sweeps 4-0, and OG performs on the Reinhardt, AKM goes off on the Zarya, Anko on the Senora, etc. I do think that Dallas Fuel is the better team here. I think they're favored maybe like 65-35 by sheer individual skill and what we've seen from them following AKM playing on the Zarya and their shot calling capabilities. I don't rank Dallas Fuel at number 6 in my power rankings 2 weeks in a row for nothing, you know. I do think this is a squad that sort of have figured out their style and have nailed it down. So, but I'm just saying, you know, Fusions on the Boston Uprising, he has some off games, he has some on games. I've seen some terrible performances from him, and he deserves some criticism for that. But I've also seen him carry his team on his back. So we'll see what goes with this one. I'd predict, honestly, Dallas Fuel 3-1 pretty easily on this one. Atlanta Reign takes on the Chengdu Hunters. Also a bit of a trap game. Atlanta Reign playing on Sunday as well against the Houston Outlaws. And neither are, honestly, like super formidable opponents, but it is still a bit of a trap game because Atlanta Reign has to win at least one of these, I think, and then they have pretty good map differential, but they can't just lose 4-0, you know what I mean? And if they lose both, then I think they're out. So they need to win at least one of them, which I think they'll do, and then just have some map differential to make sure they get good seeding and they avoid New York and Vancouver. So if they win both, that's great, because then they'll probably not face either of those two in the stage playoffs. So versus the Chengdu Hunters. Now, I think this is a bit of a trap game. I think Atlanta legit could lose this one. And there's a lot of Atlanta fans that will be upset with me. I think Atlanta still are the favorites, probably like 55-45 or 60-40. And it's, I mean, I was going to say it's not because of Ameng, but it sort of is, because Atlanta, they haven't played a ton of Sombra this stage. And that's a legit concern for me. I think that strategically, they will pull out the Sombra. And I think their coaching staff is definitely aware that they have to play some Sombra and sort of disengage from Ameng's Wrecking Ball. But I'm just throwing it out there that Erster might play some Sombra, or I don't know who, Dafran. But anyway, we haven't seen a ton of Sombra. And so just preparing specifically for the Chengdu Hunters might be a bit rough for them. You know? I mean, they could theoretically prepare really well, but then you have to execute in game. And there's plenty of players have said this in the past, that there's no one that really plays like Chengdu, so you can't really practice it that hard. So this could be a really interesting game. I'm gonna go with Chengdu Hunters in map 5, 3-2 in this game. Just for, not for the giggles of it, but I do think they legit have a chance, and I want to at least hype them up before this game. I don't think it's going to be a 4-0 Atlanta. I don't see that happening unless they actually have some god Sombra player on that team that just surprises me and makes me sad. But it could be a bit of an upset. Sunday, March 17th. Alright, we have the Philadelphia Fusion takes on the Paris Eternal at 12 p.m. Pacific. Also a really close game. Don't really know what to make of this one. Philadelphia Fusion dropped out of my power ranking top 10 this week, following the fact that they don't have any impressive wins whatsoever as of recent. I think they beat Washington Justice. They beat Valiant in map 5, which, I mean, Valiant has some good players, but not a super impressive map 5 win anyway, considering Houston Outlaws also won map 5 versus Valiant. So, you know, it's not the most impressive of wins. But despite that, Philadelphia Fusion, they stand at a 4-2 record, and they go against a Paris Eternal squad. And the Saturday result against the Washington Justice for Paris could determine a lot how Paris Eternal show up for this game, if they're super motivated or if they're just like, fuck this stage, bro. So Philadelphia Fusion could honestly just like 4-0 Paris here if Paris ends up dropping a map or dropping this set to Washington Justice. But it should theoretically be a really close game, and I do think Philadelphia Fusion has the edge, because even though Sado is a bot of a Reinhardt, his Winston is pretty good, and you sort of have to admit that. It's sort of like London Spitfire 1.2 or something. I don't know. They're not 2.0 because they're not that good, but they're like London Spitfire 1.1 or something like that. In this meta anyway. So I do think that Philadelphia Fusion will take this one. Probably 3-1 or even 4-0 if Paris drops out of stage playoffs in the match prior. Then we have Washington Justice taking on the Florida Mayhem for a 1:30 game. Bit of a snoozer for a 1:30 game, but still, a lot of people are like, oh, the quality of Overwatch is so bad. What a horrible game. This is going to be so boring. Oh my god. I think this could be a pretty entertaining game, because it's like they're so bad, both of them, that it's going to be very even and sort of entertaining. I'm not a Florida Mayhem fan. I just want to make that clear. I'm not a Florida Mayhem fan, despite the fact that I played so often with Twig, etc. But I do enjoy following Florida Mayhem, because they were so trash last year, and now they're trash again. And I'm just like, I just can't wait for the moment where Florida Mayhem starts performing, you know? And everyone's like, oh my god, holy shit! Florida Mayhem! They're doing it! They're winning! How did it do it? I can't wait for that moment. Similar to what we've had Shanghai Dragons do now, where they like won a game and it was super hype, and now they're like performing and winning games, etc. I'm waiting for that moment for Florida Mayhem, but it's almost worse because they didn't have a 0-40 streak. They're just kind of losing 9 games, winning 1. So I'm sort of waiting for Florida Mayhem to pop off, just so we can see like the fan reaction on Reddit, where they're like, "Oh, Swan is Ameng 2.0 or something like that." Like, like, "Oh, Twig is back!" I'm waiting for those kind of fun community moments, just to see what that timeline would look like, because we haven't gotten to see that yet in OWL at all. So it'd be pretty fun. So I think it could be pretty fun, because if Florida loses this game, I mean, holy shit, you're really in the fucking dumpster, aren't you? But if they win this game like 4-0, that'd be like the most Florida thing ever, and just like beat some weak ass opponent, and you're just like, oh well, that's how it goes, like Florida, they're pretty bad when they face good teams, and then they play Washington Justice and they look good, and like, oh, here comes Logix! Here comes Logix! It's like, oh, okay, he was garbage the next game, So that'd be like the most Florida Mayhem thing ever. Then we have Houston Outlaws taking on the Atlanta Reign at 3 p.m. on Sunday. Again, a close game. Houston Outlaws could go to the stage playoffs. How bizarre is that? Like, what? How did this happen? I don't even think they had a weak strength of schedule. I don't have the data in front of me. But if I look at a bit at the schedule going back here to week 4, they beat Valiant in a 2-1 victory. Week 3, they beat Florida Mayhem. And oof. And oh, I misclicked. Wow. I'm trying to record a podcast. How could you do this? And they beat... Wait, what? And they beat... They lost to New York, yeah, I remember that. And they also beat Hangzhou Spark when they were at like the worst. Okay, so they've played some pretty garbage teams. But let's not, it is Atlanta Reign. And Atlanta Reign are favorites, probably like 65-35 or 70-30 even. But who knows, like, if Atlanta Reign loses to Chengdu against on Saturday, and then they play Houston Outlaws, and then Outlaws just like go up a map by some bizarre dumb thing that Houston Outlaws does, like Drake Rat or some weird shit, and then Atlanta Reign is like, holy shit, we're about to drop out of the stage playoffs, and Houston Outlaws just go on to win the game. Like, it wouldn't surprise me, because it's just a Houston Outlaws thing to do, sort of. And I mean, if they make the stage playoffs, they're gonna be so annoying on Twitter, and just like, oh, look at us, like we always knew we were gonna make it. So it'd be fun if Houston Outlaws made the playoffs, but it'd also be obnoxious as hell if you're an analyst or a public persona like me. That's why I predict them these days, because I just can't be fucked to deal with all their social media shenanigans. That could be close anyway. Atlanta Reign still favorites, 3-1. Guangzhou Charge takes on the Vancouver Titans, and this is again, this could be a close game. We saw that they went to map 5. Vancouver Titans. They went to map 5 against Chengdu Hunters last week, and Guangzhou Charge plays a very similar style. Guangzhou Charge obviously went to map 5 against them earlier this stage as well, so there is a potential for a good game here. Oh, I just remembered I forgot match of the week. Anyway, match of the week! There you go. So, Guangzhou Charge, Vancouver Titans, match of the week. What are the maps for this one? I have to look. If it's like Busan, I'm gonna lose my mind. Oh, it's Helios. There's some triple DPS potential here. I mean, Guangzhou Charge could pull out some Pharaoh Strat on Lighthouse. Maybe rely on some Widowmaker on it's not whatever that map, the Widowmaker map. Oh my god, how am I not remembering this? I'm upset with myself. I've played this map for 3 years. Rounds Overwatch. Everyone listening to the podcast is like, it's this. How do you not know, Johnny? Right as well. Ruins. Of course, it's Ruins. I feel embarrassed. I mean, Widowmaker is not really meta on Ruins anymore, but heck it, if you're the Guangzhou Charge, why not? Surprise the Vancouver Titans or something. There's actually a bit of a triple DPS potential here on Ilios, so could be an interesting game. I think it's more fun to watch triple DPS on Ilios than it is to watch triple DPS on Busan, even though we get to see more triple DPS on Busan, so that's good in its own way. Numbani, I mean, we could see some Guangzhou triple DPS on point A, but after that, it's pretty tank heavy. So Vancouver Titans probably is going to take Numbani, and then we have Voskaya. Guangzhou could Guangzhou. Sorry, maybe there's some Chinese listeners. Guangzhou could play some triple DPS again. But I don't know, Ghost is so dominant these days. So on all of these maps, you could just play Goats and sort of be good with it. So Vancouver Titans probably will win this match. I'm gonna go with a 3-1. I think Guangzhou might win Ilios. Actually, Vancouver Titans hasn't lost a single control map, have they? Ugh! Yeah, let's go with a 4-0 for Vancouver Titans. I don't think they'll be caught off guard by Guangzhou Charge. And I might be wrong. Maybe Guangzhou wins 3-2. Who knows? They definitely could do that. But I'm going to go with a 4-0 because it just feels more comfortable for Vancouver Titans. I don't think they'll 3-1. Because if Vancouver were to drop a map, it'd be Control in my opinion. But they're so good on Control that I just sort of can't see them doing that. Anyway, that's all the matches for this week. So let's get on to Ask Reinforce. We have, should we have 4 questions or so this week? Yeah. We got Joshi Poo. That's a nice name, dude. I know this is kind of broad, but what do you think the new meta will be? And what teams will benefit, suffer as a result? I mean, we don't really know what the new meta will be. I'm actually going to skip this question. I'm going to skip this question because I don't know if they'll change more stuff on the PTR. And I don't want to be premature and say how the meta is going to change until all the changes are finalized. I think they announced today or something that he's being released next week. But I still want to wait a bit, because if I go on a limb and say something and then they change the patch notes, it's not going to be accurate anymore. So I'm actually not going to answer this question for now. Pego on Twitter asks, "Hi Jonathan, love the podcast." Oh, thank you, Pego. Thank you. What do you think of the LA Valiant decision to let go of Coach Moon? I would like you to talk about what makes a great coach, and in this context, what are the coaches and what are the players' roles in preparing strats? It depends what you're looking for when it comes to a coach, really. There's two types of coaches, in my opinion. There's like a strategical coach, and there's a father figure sort of coach. I mean, you have Arrow on the Dallas Fuel, who's a bit of a father figure. And then you have, I should really have more examples coming up here. Let's say on teams like NYXL, I think NYXL, they probably have more of a strategic head coach that says like, hey, this is what we're doing wrong, we should play these compositions or whatever. Honestly, in those camps, it might even be a bit more player run, where they say a lot of the strats, but I think maybe in New York, they have a bit more of a strategic mindset when it comes to head coaching. And in other teams, it's a bit of a father figure sort of coaching. And I think Moon for the LA Valiant, he was a big picture coach. He was that kind of, not father figure, but he was the one like running the entire thing. And then he had like subset of assistant coaches or strategic or coaches, whatever, beneath him that provided some analysis and strategy, etc. So I think, I mean, it's so weird after all the Reddit replies and all the Reddit or like the tweets from the LA Valiant players as well following his departure, where they're like, "Oh, you're the best coach ever," etc. So it's, I mean, it's weird, right? If all the Korean players says he was the best coach and they loved him so much, that tells me that like LA Valiant are focusing on sort of their Western players and they want Costa back in the lineup. And if Moon was not willing to put Costa back in the lineup, then I can see Valiant being like, hey, we don't want you involved in our team anymore because we really like Costa and we think this is the wrong decision to make. And maybe the Korean players don't like that. Maybe the Korean players would rather have had Cook in for some reason. And so I think LA Valiant's decision to let Coach Moon go is a bit of a sign to me that and combined with the tweets from the Korean players, I think that's a bit of a sign to me that LA Valiant put their foot down regarding Costa. Costa become my whole thing. And we'll see what comes of this, but I think that there's going to be a lot more things happening in the LA Valiant camp in not so far away future. So we'll see about that and how that develops, but it's weird when they let Coach Moon Coach Moon. Oh, I like Coach Moon. Coach Moon go, and all of the Korean players are like, "Oh, we love you so much. You're the best." Anyway, Alex Naylor asks, with a good handful of players making so much difference playing Sombra, Ding, Dante, Michel, Hotba, etc., why do you think the LA Gladiators haven't leaned on Surefour's very capable Sombra play? It's a good question. It really is a good question, and I'm not quite sure myself. Maybe they want to keep things simple and sort of reach a higher peak. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me because Dallas Fuel, they showed with AKM or whatever, Shanghai Dragons, they show with Ding, that those teams, they're just simply better when they play with a Sombra and they play a bit more aggressive with a Sombra. And LA Gladiators, they strike me as a pretty aggressive team, you know, that likes to go in head first. We've seen a lot of those players sort of feed on the front lines, and so it doesn't make a lot of sense to me why they wouldn't play Surefour. Now, unlike some people, I'm just going to assume that there's a good reason why they're not playing Surefour on the Sombra. It could be consistency with practice. Maybe they don't want Decay to play Sombra because Decay has replaced Surefour in the lineup. So maybe they just want some consistency for this stage and just focus on GOATs purely. And I don't think they're... I mean, there was a moment in stage 1 where they were a bit desperate, in my opinion, and maybe they should have just pulled it out. But it is pretty weird to me, and I think they just opted for consistency over anything else. And I mean, they looked really good in week 4, so I won't really say that they're wrong or anything. But it is pretty weird to me, too, that they haven't played Surefour Sombra. Hadi asks, Hateful Hades asks, what the heck? At Hateful Hades on Twitter. You're probably not going to be very high on Philly after their match this week. So what do you think is their issue? Is it really just Sato and Ryan? Personally, I think there is some kind of coming issue going on instead of putting all the blame on Sato. I mean, coming issue... That's hard to say. It is a mixed roster. And obviously, I do think it could be a contributing factor, but it just seems to me that they don't have like the ultimate combos, etc. nailed down. The big question for me would be how much better would this team be with Hotba instead of Poco? Not because Poco is bad. Poco is, as we know, a good diva, but how that would affect Hotba's communication with Carpe and Sato. So it is a good point you're bringing up, and I'm not quite sure what the big problem is. I do think that Sato not being able to Reinhardt is a big problem for Philly, because they look relatively good when they play Sato's Winston, and I say relatively good, saying like average or like, mid-table team. And I mean, Carpe, at times he's amazing at Zarya, but he's not DPS Carpe, you know what I mean? Like, Carpe when he plays DPS is just sick, just amazing at the game, like league MVP candidate, no problem. But when he's playing Zarya, it's not quite the same thing. I also don't think that like Boombox is a top Zenyatta by any means. I think a lot of people have been overhyping him a bit. I think he's probably above average Zenyatta, but he's nothing fancy or anything. Especially in this league, when we have so many great Zenyatas coming into the league, like Twilight, Violet, Shu. So Boombox is quickly losing a bit of ground in that regard. So